As a teaching assistant, your role is an interesting one. You are not quite a full professor of the undergraduate students in your charge, and you are not quite their peer. You are certainly more knowledgeable and experienced since you are a graduate student in your field of study, yet you are still a novice yourself. Yet you know what it's like to be a student who is managing the discipline, acquiring new knowledge and new skills. In this way, you can serve as a critical mediator for the student. That is, a mediator between the undergraduate students and the subject matter of your discipline, even between the students and the full professor themselves. Think of yourself as an older, more experienced brother or sister, and you are helping your parents to guide and raise them. Your primary goal then as a TA is to help your students learn. Ultimately, this is your job, and the challenge is for you to balance that job with your own studies as a graduate student. So what do you actually do as a TA in your department? What activities or duties are you responsible for? Well, that depends. It depends on your field of study, and it depends on your department and your advisor, whatever they think you can be most helpful in helping students learn. For example, you might assist a professor in the classroom or a lab. You might teach a class or lead a lab session yourself independently with less guidance or support from a full professor. You might lead a classroom discussion, asking probing questions and encouraging students to think critically, discuss and interpret subject matter as original thought, to hash out ideas together, to problem solve as a whole class. You might grade student work in your office, taking attendance, keeping records, things of that nature. You might hold regular office hours for individual student meetings or small group meetings, especially for students who might have questions about their grades, about some course content or subject matter that they might be struggling with and that you can help with. You might email students about announcements or meet students after class. You might respond to student emails, and you might file documentation and complete forms for the departments. These are just some of the responsibilities and duties that a TA might be involved in. But again, it depends on the department. It depends on the specific TA assignment. And you may not be involved in all of these, but maybe just some of them. More specifically, if you're in the classroom or having a lot of interaction outside of the classroom with students, there are more specific things that you might have to do. For example, you might have to explain a term, a concept, a process, or a theory in your discipline. You might have to explain a graph, chart, or calculation. You might have to explain homework assignments or explain grading procedures. You might have to explain safety precautions like in a laboratory or explain step-by-step procedures. You might have to give advice and suggestions to students. You might have to even explain the rationale for why a certain grade was given to a student. You might have to give a warning to problematic students. And as I said before, you might have to file documentation and complete forms. A wide variety of things and more that you might have to do. So what are some suggestions that I have for you while you're in the TA job, but also before you actually go into teaching or assisting with teaching? Definitely the first one at the top of my list is meet with your professor mentor or administrative mentor who's in charge of TAs in your department and ask them about job expectations. Very specific logistical information about what time is the class, what is attendance requirements, what are other requirements for the class as well as the job. Ask for past syllabuses that other TAs or even other professors have used. This way you get an idea about how to structure a syllabus, certainly, but also you get an idea of learning objectives, course objectives, assignments, rules, and regulations. Also, ask about student backgrounds. For example, who are these students? What courses have they taken before? What is their previous knowledge about the subject matter that you'll be teaching, if any? You might find that you expected students to know much more about chemistry, and you find that, wow, that's not exactly true. They haven't taken this course in high school, for example. That's really, really important for you to know. Talk to other more experienced TAs. What do they suggest? How do they teach? How do they grade? Observe a class and notice how others, whether they're TAs or professors, how do they interact with students in and outside of the classroom? How do they talk to students? How do they refer to students? How friendly or casual are they? How do they maintain authority in the classroom while still being a facilitator of learning, while still being polite and professional? This is another important thing that might be different from what you expect. Ask someone to observe your class and give you some feedback once you start interacting with students. Or if you're not teaching a class or assisting in the class, have them observe you tutoring a student individually or during office hours. If you're just emailing, send an email draft to someone to get their feedback. If you run into a problem finally, or a concern or a problematic situation, always, always, always consult with your professor or administrator, particularly the one that is assigned to TAs. Never be afraid to bring up a problematic situation or a question or a concern, because they are there to help you. In conclusion, whatever assignment you have as a TA, whatever your responsibilities are, always remember these suggestions. Serving as a TA can be a very rewarding experience, I think, especially when you see your students not only learn, but also begin to get excited about the subject matter that you are so interested in. And as a TA, you can serve as a critical role in that learning process.